Coming up, it was a song that changed everything virtually overnight. From a metal band that had been bubbling up since the early 80s. This one not only made them global superstars, it also became one of the biggest anthems in sports history. Up next, the story of this blazing metal classic, one that was so mind-blowing. I sold one of my most prized possessions to have the money to buy the album when I was a teenager. It's coming up on Professor of Rock, brought to you by Zenni Eyewear. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. We invite you to join our community of music celebration. By subscribing below for our daily content, we always have something special for you every day. Now it's time for another edition of Number One in Our Hearts, where of course we talk about a song that should have been a number one hit on the Billboard Hot 100. And this one is a no-brainer. Hush little baby, don't say a word, and never mind that noise you heard. It's just the beast under your bed, in your closet, in your head. The menacing lyrics, of course, taken from the bridge of Metallica's sinister 1991 metal lullaby, Enter Sandman. This stadium anthem was written by Metallica's Big Three, lead singer James Hetfield, drummer Lars Ulrich, and lead guitarist Kirk Hammett. The Sandman is a character from Western folklore that makes children sleep. By sprinkling sand in their eyes, the stuff that sticks to your eyelashes that you wipe off when you wake up, that's the legend. Enter Sandman unfolded from a Kirk Hammett guitar riff. Hammett's famous riff was inspired by the classic rock riff used in Ann and Nancy Wilson's Magic Man. It was created by former Heart guitarist Roger Fisher. Heart, of course, one of the great bands of the rock era. Now, although it was Fisher's riff that influenced Hammett, it was not how the riff was placed in the Heart recording of Magic Man that motivated him. Hammett actually revealed that he was aroused from the way that the Magic Man riff was sampled in the track Personal by Ice-T from his 1988 album, Power. Hammett also said that the riff was inspired by Soundgarden's 1989 album, Louder Than Love. Great album. Hammett had been a Soundgarden fan from, I guess, the very beginning. And he once remarked in an interview, and I quote, "I was trying to capture their attitude toward big, heavy riffs. This reminds me of like when the Beatles were inspiring the Byrds and the Beach Boys, and then those two groups in turn inspired the Beatles. This was going on all the time in that moment. Metal, alternative, grunge, hip-hop, all those artists were doing the same thing. Pearl Jam was inspired by REM. REM was inspired by Nirvana. Alice in Chains crossed the lines of metal and grunge all the time. You had Anthrax and Public Enemy together. It was a great time for inspiration. And years later, Soundgarden frontman, the late Chris Cornell, would actually cover the Metallica classic One in a mashup with U2's identically titled song. On Enter Sandman, the original Hammett riff was only 2 bars. And Ulrich suggested that Kirk play the first bar 4 times to give the riff, a more melodic hook. Hammett said that Ulrich's suggestions made it even more hooky. Another distinctive part of Hammett's infectious guitar playing is, of course, his use of the wah-wah pedal throughout Enter Sandman. The frequencies reached by the working of the wah pedal, in Kirk's words, got his gut going. And it unleashed a lot of his aggression in his approach, especially for the fury of his solo. The band had finished the instrumental track that Hetfield called a wall of guitars. Enter Sandman only has 2 riffs. Think about that. It's just astonishing that the band captured that kind of sonic intensity with only 2 riffs. Enter Sandman was the first song written for Metallica's milestone Black Album, but ironically, it was the last song that lyrics were written for. Apparently, the original lyrics for Enter Sandman were themed around sudden instant death syndrome, SIDS, when a baby dies in his crib of unknown causes. Mysterious tragedy was also referred to as crib death. Just a very disturbing theme indeed. The highly respected record man, though, Bob Rock, was producing Metallica's Black Album, and he believed that Enter Sandman had the makings of a classic. If the lyrics were toned down to make it more mass appeal and less intimidating. Of course, Bob Rock had a great instinct for those things. Bob Rock and Lars Ulrich went to Hetfield, who was the song's lyrical composer, and they told him that the lyrics could be a lot better, which really angered Hetfield. Would anger anybody. But James calmed down, and he took the criticism as a challenge and reworked the lyric line. Hetfield changed the subject of the tune to be what he called a mental thing, about nightmares, and everything that comes with them. Thus, he abandoned that idea for the song to be about crib death. One of the key lyrical alterations in Enter Sandman was the change from disrupt the perfect family to off to Never Neverland. Think about that. One of the most memorable lines in the final version. Off to Never Neverland. In the recording of Enter Sandman and other tracks on the Black Album, producer Bob Rock orchestrated just another ingenious alteration. He convinced the band to play together during the recording sessions instead of playing their parts separately as they had become accustomed to, thus capturing the intensity of their live concert performances in the recording. Bob Rock also made the bass guitar parts more integral on Enter Sandman than previous Metallica material. And that bass line on Enter Sandman was just incredible. It was a career pinnacle for former Metallica bassist Jason Newsted. Bob Rock's son is the child's voice that comes in after the guitar solo of Enter Sandman, joining Hetfield on the reciting of the classic children's prayer from the 18th century. Now I lay me down to sleep, I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take.
Pray the Lord my soul to keep.
If I die before I wake.
That transitions into Hetfield's sinister, growling vocal to close the bridge. I mean, the riveting outro of Enter Sandman is set up by Hetfield's maniacal cackle, followed by that booming "oh." And in classic James Hetfield style, just really magnifies Enter Sandman's dark intensity. Enter Sandman was the first song on the track sequence of the Black Album and the first single, although the band argued over which song should be the lead single. The track Holier Than Thou was the first choice, but Lars Ulrich vigorously campaigned for Enter Sandman to be the first single. He heard what we all hear, just a brilliant song. After much debate, the band went with Enter Sandman to lead. And it seems like, for all of us, a very easy decision since Enter Sandman is an undeniable powerhouse, but let's reflect on what was happening in the music scene in 1991. To kind of clear that up, the popularity of hair metal was, of course, declining. Grunge burst onto the scene like a meteor. Rock bands in general had to be just even more strategic about career maturation to ensure their longevity and not get left behind in a dying trend. Metallica had some of the most diehard fans in the business, and they were the preeminent thrash metal band, releasing 4 of the most influential albums of the genre: Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, followed by And Justice for all just masterpieces. However, the band members of Metallica were approaching their 30s, and they had to face the challenge of becoming maturing rockers. How do they age with the audience, stay true to who they are, and not only stay relevant, but dominant? Metallica had a tough tightrope to walk. For career growth, there was a need and a desire to evolve into a more accessible sound, but they didn't want to alienate their core fans that had worshipped them from the very beginning. Songs like Enter Sandman and really every track on the Black Album were just brilliant stepping stones to even greater heights for Metallica. It was really wise for Metallica and their management team to look to create music that would generate, an even larger audience, but stay credible and stay true to their roots. Enter Sandman is one of several masterworks on the Black Album. Speaking of the Black Album, it's the equivalent of a perfect game in baseball. It's that flawless. When it came out, I had just been swept off my feet by new wave and alternative after I was the top 40 guy. The few years prior, I truly discovered bands like Depeche Mode, the Cure, the Smiths, the Replacements, and the like. I dismissed it, that is, until I was in my friend's room. He had a brand new stereo with a multi-disc player, and all of a sudden, that guitar part of Enter Sandman began to ring out. Within 2 minutes, I was begging his older brother to drive me to the store so I could get my own copy. The problem is I only had $8 for my job moving sprinkler pipe, and the CD was going to be at least $14 or $15. That's back when you paid for music. At that time, I was spending every cent that I had on music. I just bought Toad the Wet Sprocket, Fear, and I also remember I had to save some money because, the Pixies, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Tribe Called Quest, Soundgarden, and Erasure, they all had like new albums coming out, and I always had to save for that. I tell you, what a time. I had to have the Black Album though, so I did the only thing I could. I sold my Ken Griffey Jr. Upper Deck baseball card for almost nothing, to scrape together enough money for this perfect record. I remember listening to every song and I was transformed, especially Nothing Else Matters and The Unforgiven and Wherever I May Roam and, of course, Enter Sandman.
And nothing else matters.
What a time, like I said. Enter Sandman broke boundaries like a fiend. It became a platinum single, selling more than 1 million copies. The song was nominated for Best Rock Song at the 34th Grammy Awards in 1992, but in one of the most puzzling moments in the history of the Grammys, Enter Sandman lost for Best Rock Song in favor of The Soul Cages by Sting. Now, no disrespect to Sting, I love him, one of my favorites ever, but come on! Enter Sandman was a once-in-a-lifetime song. Now, it did get voted Song of the Year in the 1991 Metal Edge Reader's Choice Awards. And of course, the popularity of Enter Sandman catapulted Metallica's Black Album to sell more than 30 million units around the world. It's like the Michael Jackson Thriller of metal. It was the #1 Billboard album in America in 91 for 4 weeks. And that is a huge feat for a metal band, or really anybody. But Enter Sandman not only propelled Metallica into the next phase of their career, it also vaulted them into worldwide superstardom as one of the biggest rock bands of all time. You might even say that Metallica's Enter Sandman won the World Series 5 times. It was the signature song for the greatest relief pitcher of all time, Mariano Rivera. Certainly gave him motivation and the crowd to mow down hitters on baseball's biggest stage. Metallica still reigns as one of the world's largest grossing touring acts, and they continue to release albums full of inspired material. Top 40 radio programmers could not deny the demand for Enter Sandman in 91, but, because of the heavy guitar and the edgy subject matter, I guess, I've talked to a few DJs from that time, they've told me the tune was forced to evening and late night airplay only. So the top 40 stations didn't scare off their older listeners who they depended on for daytime ratings and subsequent advertising dollars. Those things always ruined everything. Anyway, because of the day-parted programming, Enter Sandman stalled at number 16 on the Billboard Hot 100. Really an inaccurate indication of his true popularity. I mean, the week Enter Sandman peaked at number 16, the top 5 songs of the week were Emotions, Mariah Carey, Good Vibrations by Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch, Do Anything by Natural Selection, I Adore Me More by Color Me Bad, and Romantic by Karen White. I'll take the Sandman. The blood-rushing, endorphin-pumping, end-all, be-all jolt to the system, Metallica's Enter Sandman is #1 in our hearts, in my heart, for sure. It is an exhilaration that rock music was meant to be, taking any listener to Never Never Land with every listen. Man, leave us a comment about Metallica, this earth-shattering song and phenomenal album. Tell us your memories about it. Celebrate Metallica in style by getting the Black Album. You have to have it. You can click on the Amazon link below and to get other Metallica merch, including this shirt. If you like our content, we invite you to join our community of music celebration. We also invite you to be an honorary patron. Patreon is really important for us because it actually takes money to make these videos, and it allows us to do more videos, to do more interviews. Our whole goal is to celebrate the greatest songs and the greatest artists of all time, and I will not stop until I do. So we appreciate your support there. Until next time, I say it every time, but it's true. 3 chords and the truth, my friends. Stay safe out there and rock hard.